What's up, guys? We are continuing our retool or rebuild series. Up next, we have the Washington Capitals. So, a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins have been eliminated 4 times in a row in the first round and haven't passed the first round since 2018. And 2018 is when they won the Stanley Cup. So they haven't seen any success since they lifted the cup. And there's a lot of questions surrounding the Washington Capitals that we're going to be dissecting today and trying our best to come up with the best
Oh.
solutions in terms of how this team should proceed moving forward. Um, we all know that Alexander Ovechkin is on the cusp of attempting to beat Gretzky in the all-time goals department in the NHL history. So I think he does it. The thing is, does he do it with a contending team or a rebuilding team? So today, me and Luca have a lot to talk about. So Luca, let's hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, look, like you mentioned before about Alex Ovechkin, I think that that's been a big part of his career, right? We talk about Alex Ovechkin becoming the greatest goal scorer that the NHL has ever seen, at least in the modern era. I think for the Capitals, there's an opportunity here for them to still kind of, play it out and kind of see what Ovechkin can do. But the problem is that this team is one of the oldest teams in the NHL, right? And if you look at it, they've got a lot of guys that are really old. Alex Ovechkin's 36; he's making 9.5 million for the next 4 years. After this one, Nicklas Backstrom, who may have a career-threatening injury that may force him to retire, and so that plays a big part in Washington's issues moving on to next season. And I think that that's a big reason why I think we're having this video today. They've got a lot of old players on their team. I mentioned Ovechkin, I mentioned Backstrom. TJ Oshie's 35 years old. He's getting paid $5.75 million. Lars Eller, 33, gets paid $3.5 million. You've got a bunch of guys like Marcus Johansson, Nick Dowd as well. Garnet Hathaway, he's 30 years old. You go on the defensive core, pretty old defensive core. You've got John Carlson, who's 32. Orlov's 30. Justin Schultz, he's a unrestricted free agent this season, so he's going to be testing the market. Nick Jensen, who's 31. Michael Kempney, also an unrestricted free agent. He's also 31. And then Trevor Van Riemsdyk, who's 30. The only thing that the Capitals really have going for them in terms of youth is a net with Samsonov and Vanacek. And I think that that's kind of where
That's
the
also a
Capitals
question, though.
yeah, but I think that this is kind of where the Capitals need to start figuring themselves out. What are they? Are they going to be a team that's going to, at least until Ovechkin's there, that's going to challenge for a playoff spot and try to win another Stanley Cup? Or is it time for the Capitals, and in my opinion, I think it is, time for them to rebuild again? And I think that this is a big question mark because, we look at how good Washington is, right? We look at how good they have, the team that they have. They're a good regular season team. We've seen how well they've done. But apart from that 2018 Stanley Cup run, the Capitals haven't really done anything. And so it's kind of been a little bit of a frustrating time for Capitals fans because, Alex Ovechkin, like I said, arguably the greatest goal scorer we've ever seen, at least now until Austin Matthews, and Austin Matthews might challenge him now. But I'm saying in the past, it was Alex Ovechkin. And now, he's getting old and he's on the verge of, like retiring in the next 5 years, at least until after his contract expires. And now you don't even have
Or
Backstrom. So
at
there's
least
a big
until he beats Gretzky's record, because I think
exactly.
that's
So
basically all that's left on his mind.
that's it. So I think for the Caps, for me personally, I think it's an opportunity for them to rebuild. And look, they've got guys that they can trade. Like they've got some players that they can move here, get some salary cap, maybe get some young talent. They've got some prospects too that are okay, that look like they can maybe make the jump to the NHL. So they've got guys that can definitely uh, help speed up the rebuild a little bit. But I think the Capitals need to kind of tear it all down and just start from scratch. I mean, you've got Vanacek. I like Vanacek. I think he's a young goaltender. I think you can build your team a little bit around him. Samsonov, I'm not sure what the plan is with him. I don't know if you
There's been a
decide to
lot of
keep him.
rumors around
So I don't know.
around him.
Personally, I think they should
So
rebuild. I think Caps should do a full-on rebuild. But kind of like we talked about in the Penguins video yesterday, it- until Crosby and Ovechkin retire, I don't see a situation where either Pittsburgh or Washington embrace a full rebuild. Now, whether I think it's a good idea or not, that's besides the point. But I think for Pittsburgh and Washington especially, I think these guys want to make sure that Crosby and Ovechkin get one more cup before they retire. So
and
that's kind of
Samsonov had a very good playoff run with the Capitals against the Florida Panthers, and they really gave Florida um, some trouble, and unfortunately, I think that they should have won the series because they would have put more of a fight against the Lightning. I'm not saying that the Caps would have beat the Lightning, but we all predicted that Florida was going to beat the Capitals. But the Capitals showed that with championship pedigree and playoff experience, that they were able to compete against the Florida Panthers, which they lack that. And we saw that with the Tampa Bay Lightning series that they basically lacked that, and they didn't get the opportunity to show what they're capable of. If you look at the team on paper, they're fantastic. But again, Tampa with the championship pedigree and the playoff experience, back to back Stanley Cup champions, they get it done and they're
Yeah,
eliminated. So
yeah,
that goes to show that, you know, like I was talking to my cousin who is a huge Washington Capitals fan, that the Capitals had that series but they lost it themselves. The Florida Panthers did not beat them. They like the Washington Capitals beat themselves. So I mean, look, in terms of the goaltending situation, I would say that you need to choose a starter, and you have to trade the other guy. They lost Vanacek to Seattle, but then traded back for him because again they felt like Samsonov was not their guy yet. They still had decisions to make, and they wanted to see between Vanacek and Samsonov who's gonna be their starting goaltender. Both fantastic goaltenders. The thing is that I think with Vanacek, I think he's more reliable in terms of his personal life as well. Samsonov has gotten in trouble a couple of times before, and I don't really know if you want that type of guy in the locker room. I know there's a couple of Russians in Washington, so maybe he felt very comfortable. He felt like he could get away with stuff. But the thing is that this is the NHL, the National Hockey League. You cannot mess around. You need to prove your worth and be a consistent and reliable goaltender. And when
yeah,
I think about that, my answer is Vanacek. So I think they should trade Samsonov. He has a lot more value, especially after that playoffs that he played fantastic, in my opinion. I know teams like the Montreal Canadiens, the Buffalo Sabres, Arizona Coyotes, and the list goes on, need goaltending, especially that they're lacking in that department. And in terms of the Habs, it's because we don't know what Price's situation is. And going with Montembeault and Allen is just not the key to success for a rebuilding team that wants to build a younger team with speed and skill and so on. So I think they need a fresh name in net. So I think that's a fit. But
yeah,
uh, they could go after. I know they were interested in Marc-Andre Fleury. He's a UFA, so maybe they could sign him as a backup goaltender. But or maybe they could trade for one. But they need to figure out their goaltending situation. And in terms of their defense, I think there should be a little bit of a shakeup too. Carlson and Orlov, I think they're fantastic. I think even Jensen, was pretty impressive this year. I liked what he was doing, but Michael Kempney, dealing with injuries and stuff, I think they have to let him go. He did have a good start with the Capitals when he joined the team, but after that, didn't really impress. Yeah, Van
I
Riemsdyk, he was a healthy scratch here and there. Justin Schultz, I don't know if they're gonna re-sign him or not. I mean, he proved to be pretty healthy with the Caps, and also he was really good. So, um,
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
look,
I
we'll see
I
what
like
happens.
I like I like Martin Ferravari a lot. I think for me, there's a lot of situations where he had a really good season. I think he was the guy that came kind of under the radar a little bit going into this year, and I think that's a good sign for the Capitals because they've got a guy in Ferravari who can replace kind of what Justin Schultz was there. Because I think look, Justin Schultz is an unrestricted free agent, so he's like I don't think he should come back in my opinion. But in terms of like offense, and you talked a little bit about making trades in terms of Samsonov. Well, one guy that I think they should move or they should attempt to move is TJ Oshie. TJ Oshii's only played half the year this year. 25
It's
points for him.
35.
He's making 5.75 million for the next 3 years after this one. And he's got a modified no trade clause. Obviously, that's a tough situation. But for the Caps, they need to find ways to move these contracts, right? You got Anthony Mantha, he's 27, that's fine. You got Tom Wilson, he's 28, that's fine. Those guys, that's okay. But I think, and Kuznetsov at 30 is fine too. But Oshie's a guy that I think has to get moved. And if you don't know what's going on with Nicklas Backstrom, you need to find a way to kind of replace him. Maybe not necessarily get a first line center because I think Kuznetsov can do that role no problem. But definitely get a second line center to replace Nicklas Backstrom. in that role. And I think for Lars Eller, I mean, look, Lars Eller's 33. He's an older veteran presence, but he's still a veteran presence. I think for $3.5 million, he does the job. I don't think he's necessarily that bad, but I think besides that, there's a lot of guys that I think the Caps can definitely move on from. Marcus Johansson's a guy that they brought in at the deadline. I don't think they should bring him back. They extended Nick Dowd for another 3 years. He's 31 years old. I think the Capitals need to start finding ways to become younger, right? You've got Hendrix Lapierre, who's a young prospect that I think has a lot of potential. You've got Connor McMichael as well,
And he
who's
dropped
another one.
in his respective draft. And when the Capitals got him, they were really happy with that,
Yeah,
because he was supposed to be drafted higher in that draft year. And McMichael has been impressive too. And another guy that they signed not so long ago, and he has 1 year left on his contract, is Connor Sheary. So here's the
yeah.
question: do you keep him because he's affordable at 1.5 million, or do you necessarily try to trade him now where his value is really high? Um, and like I look at their tops, their bottom six, it's solid, and they're all signed to you know contracts that they could respect Ovechkin's time window in terms of trying to win a Stanley Cup. You have Hathaway, McMichael, Dowd. Uh, those guys are not bad by any means. Lars Eller, but in terms of Lars Eller, I think I would try to move him. I would try to move on from older guys that were part of their championship team where it's just not working out anymore. You need kind of like a fresh perspective. And if you potentially put Nicklas Backstrom on LTIR, you're saving around $9 million, and that's a
Yeah.
lot of money. And you could go sign a good caliber center um, on the free agency market, like Claude Giroux, or my prediction, which I was teasing yesterday in the Pittsburgh video, Evgeny Malkin, who is a very good friend of Alexander Ovechkin, and I know this team loves Russians already, so I mean, there's a perfect fit
I
there, and I
I
think he'll be a perfect
personally I
replacement for Backstrom.
I personally don't think I think it would be really bad if Malkin went to Washington just because the fact that he played for the Pittsburgh Penguins and it's kind of you're going to a rival team. I don't think Penguins fans would be really happy if Evgeny Malkin left Pittsburgh to go to Washington. I know it's happened before. Justin Schultz did it as like he went. Carl Hagelin as well played for Pittsburgh and plays for
Brooks
Washington.
Orpik, a lot of Pittsburgh Penguin
Brooks Orpik. So a
players
lot of them
left
did it, but I think
to
because it's a big
Washington.
name, like Evgeny Malkin, I think that I don't think Pittsburgh fans would be too happy about that. And I think Malkin, out of respect, wouldn't do it, in my opinion, at least. However, I'm not so sure. The problem with Washington is, look, they've got. I think they're a team that look they're not as bad as Pittsburgh in terms of draft picks. If you look at their draft picks, they have a first round pick this year. They have a second round this year. They have a third round pick this year. No fourth, 1/5, 1/6, or 1/7. So they have draft picks. I think if you're Washington, you got to trade maybe some players. Obviously, we mentioned TJ Oshie. He's a guy that I think can generate you some draft picks. Maybe Kempney's
Lars
another.
Eller is another.
Lars Eller's another one. Carl Hagelin, he makes 2.7 million. He's another guy that I think could maybe get you something. I think the Caps should get some draft picks because I think they haven't had a problem drafting players and developing players. I think it's been more of a problem of the fact that they've kind of tried to build their team based on veteran presence and not necessarily based on youth. And I think they need to have a combination of both. But I like Lapierre. I like their draft pick that they made last year. I like Faravari. I think he's young and a decent defenseman as well. And they've obviously got Connor McMichael, who's taken a big step. I think they need to find ways to build around those guys as well. I know they're not elite prospects, but they're decent guys who can play top 6 minutes, top 4 defensive minutes as well. And there's also Alexander Alexiev, who's another one that I think he's played in the AHL a little bit this year. Maybe he makes the jump to the NHL next year. But they've got guys that I think have decent potential. I think it's a matter of building through that and
Their
kind of
prospect
finding
pool
a
is a
way
lot
to
better than the Pittsburgh Penguins. We could all agree on that.
in terms of prospect pool, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a big thing for Washington. I think they're ahead in that department. But again, look, they've got a first round pick this year. I don't think they should trade it. It's going to be probably in the
Can
mid
I suggest
early
something?
early 20s. Yeah,
Can I
what's up?
suggest something crazy?
Yeah,
Philip Forsberg was traded by the Washington Capitals to
for Martin
Nashville
Ehlers.
from Martin Erad and so on, right?
Yeah,
He's a UFA. If we go with your logic, Luca, and we trade TG Oshie or maybe Lars Eller as well, open up cap space, or even the fact that Backstrom may never play again because he has a hip injury that's never going to be 100% recovered. And you have also Carl Hagelin, who's dealing with an eye injury that may never play again. You're clearing up a lot of cap space. So, would you sign Philip Forsberg and
Yes,
bring him
and I'm
back to
gonna
the
tell you
Washington
what.
Capitals?
And yes, and I'm going to tell you why. Because we're talking about this team getting younger. And yes, we're talking about rebuilding. The thing with the Capitals is Ovechkin's getting old. He's not getting any younger, right? And Ovechkin at some point is going to fall off. And if you're the Caps, if you want to speed up your rebuild, Philip Forsberg is the guy that helps you do that. Why? He's 27 years old, right? He's still young. He's still got prime of his career to go. And I think that if you're a team like Washington, yes, you drafted him, so I think there's definitely ties there. But he's also young enough that you can rebuild for 3, 4 years. And when by the time you're ready to compete again, he'll be 31, 32, and in the prime of his career and still playing good hockey. So I think if you're the Capitals, that's an opportunity, especially with Backstrom out. And if they can move a guy like TJ Oshie, I think that's a guy that you definitely should pursue in the offseason. But then it becomes the question of, is this team rebuilding or are they trying to go for another run?
Well, look,
Right?
I
That's
think
the
my
question.
my answer, you want to rebuild, I want to retool. I think this team is still very competitive. I think they're in better hands in terms of the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're in a better situation in terms of prospects and the
Yeah.
players because a lot of them are signed to lengthy contracts. And like I think there's more players that are tradable on the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins in terms of top
Well,
six. And
I just
you could
want to
also bring back
emphasize
a guy like, sorry.
I just want to emphasize something really quick. I don't want a
Yes.
full on rebuild for the Caps, but I'm saying like kind of like what we said with Pittsburgh. It's like a 2, 3 year rebuild, and then they're back to being the Capitals.
And look, I don't expect them to go after a guy like Kadri, who's going to be expensive, or a guy like Johnny Gaudreau or
You know
Bergeron,
who you know
but
who they should go for?
they could go for Vincent Trocek or as a centerman, or they also could go for um, what's his name? I mean,
You know who they should
thanks,
go
don't we
for?
forget it.
Kevin Fiala.
What about Ryan
That's
Strome? That's another interesting guy too. He could play center too. And these
I
guys are like affordable guys. And if you are losing the guys we named, you could sign these guys to realistic deals. We're not expecting the Washington Capitals to like drop a crap ton of money because they're really tight in terms of cap space and they still want to be competitive. So they're not going to do a full on rebuild. But expect them to move some names here and there. And if Backstrom's gone, that's a lot of money off the cap. And I know a lot of Washington Capital fans are saying, you know what? Yeah, we did win in 2018, but if you look at our history, with the core that we have, it hasn't been really successful in terms of playoff success. And, it's frustrating for a lot of them. So they want to see a little bit of a fresh perspective in terms of like where this team's going and see if maybe they could change some things around. And I know with Trotz, they won and so on, and they had a good coaching and stuff, but I think that year was just meant for them. And I think that this team, if they do not change a little bit of like their perspective in terms of their playoff experience and try to bring in new guys and get rid of some old guys and try to shake things up,
yeah.
I think this team's gonna have some
I
trouble
I
to
just
go
think
far.
I just think personally, like I look at the Capitals and I look at where they've been over the last 4 years, and I'm like, there's no progress here. Like you haven't made any progress. You've kind of just stayed the same. And
Same thing
so,
with the Penguins. You could
but
be
that's what it is, and that's kind of
amazing
why.
in yeah, you could be amazing in the regular season, but if you don't have any playoff success, it means
But
nothing.
that's
It's all
why
for
I think
nothing.
they should rebuild, and I think it's a different case for every team, right? You look at Florida, who just got swept. Like they're a younger team, so they don't need to throw everything down. Same with Toronto; they don't need to get rid of everything. But
Yeah,
in terms of Washington and Pittsburgh, they're more older teams. They've already kind of had playoff success in the sense that they both won Stanley Cups not too long ago, or at least Washington. In Washington's case, they haven't won a Stanley Cup not too long ago, and so you're kind of in that position again where you're like, okay, you've won your cup. You have Ovechkin, who most likely will be Gretzky's record. But now it's time for you to also focus on the youth and kind of build from, get some younger players in the lineup, put yourself in a position to draft some talented players and get rid of guys that are a little bit older, right? Guys
exactly.
like TJ Oshie, guys like,
And with
not maybe
yeah.
not John Carlson, but you know what I
And with
mean.
and
That
with
you
that
get
being said, we just wanted to say thank you so much, guys, for watching this video and subscribing to us and liking this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with everybody. See you on the next episode.